What matters ultimately is, okay, now we got a job to do. And our agency's been very good about going out and doing the job.
Once they come in, once they're introduced into Colorado, and it's never that simple. It's not. There's a lot of pieces that have to fall in line.
There will be lawsuits likely. There will be requests for injunctions, which a judge could keep the federal government from delisting.
Welcome back to the eHunter Newscast. I'm your host for this episode, Taryn Hunt. Hope you all are doing well. On today's podcast, I actually have a repeat guest. It's Randy Hampton of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Randy has become a good friend of mine, and he is full of a lot of great information. As most people know, wolves were on the legislation, on the ballot for this past election period. And in Colorado, they passed the introduction of wolves into Colorado, and so that's a pretty hot topic. And so I got Randy, I got in contact with him and asked if he'd be willing to jump on again with me and chat about what happens now that this is passed and it's going to happen. What does it look like? What's the timetable? Randy is full of some amazing information. He's such a great guy, and I appreciate him being willing to take the time to chat with me on this podcast. Before we jump into the podcast, guys, please remember to subscribe to the podcast, share it around. If you guys would, please go on to wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Podbean, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever it is. If you guys could go on, leave us a review, give us a star rating, we would greatly appreciate it. Those things help us get to the top of podcast lists and things like that, so we'd appreciate if you guys wouldn't just take just a few minutes to go on and do that for us. Also, before we get into the podcast, I want to send a huge shout out and thanks to our sponsor, Vortex Optics. Vortex sponsors everything that we do at eHunter. They are a great partner for us. We appreciate them and what they do for the eHunter name. We're proud to work alongside of them. They're an American-made company, and right now, American-made is where it's at. I mean, I shouldn't even say it right now. All the time, American-made is where it's at, and we just appreciate them. Guys, if you haven't checked out their stuff, you honestly can't beat it. Go to vortexoptics.com, check out their binoculars, their rifle scopes, red dots, tripods. I mean, they have everything. And also, guys, I put up on our Instagram and Facebook stories just the other night some of their new Vortex wear apparel. They have some really cool stuff. So whether you're going on a date, whether you're going to the mountain, whatever you're doing, honestly, they have apparel for everything. So go to their website. If you have questions about it, reach out to me. My email is TarronH, which is TERRONH at ehunter.com. That's EHUNTR.com. Send me messages with questions that you have about Vortex Optics in general, or about their apparel line, or whatever. But anyways, we appreciate them. We appreciate what they do for us here at eHunter. So thank you guys for listening. Appreciate all of your support. Let us know of any questions, comments you have, and I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to the eHunter Newscast. I have a return guest today, one that I'm really excited to have on. Today I have Randy Hampton, who is the Public Information Officer with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. He's been on with me before. We've talked about some other hot topic articles we've had, but I don't know. This one might top the hot topic articles. But before we jump into that, Randy, how you doing today?
Doing fabulous. Thanks, Taryn, for having me on, and happy to join you. And you're right, this is probably the topic that draws the most interest, no matter where you stand on the issue. It's a hot one.
It is. We've published so many articles on this. Well, I'll get it out there. So what we're going to be talking about today, for those that live in Colorado, people that hunt in Colorado, come to Colorado, whatever, probably know about the new legislation that was passed in these past elections, and that is the introduction of the gray wolf into Colorado. And so we've done a lot of articles on this, and it is, my goodness, Randy, when we publish an article about wolves, it's like everybody comes to that article, and podcasts are going to be the same way. But it should be fun. We're going to try and share some information with all you guys out there today. I have I sent some questions to Randy before we started recording, and we'll talk about those questions, hopefully answer some of the questions that you all have sent in to us via email or however. but we'll jump into that. Randy, I know you introduced yourself last time, but I think in case somebody hadn't listened to that podcast, would you mind just taking a few minutes and just telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. And Taryn, as you introduced me, my name is Randy Hampton. I'm a public information officer for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Started with the agency back in 2003, so been around a while. I took a bit of a break and moved out of state, but have come back. And my job is to kind of help people understand what's going on with parks and wildlife in the northwest region of the state. So I basically cover everything north of I-70. You get to throw in the Aspen area, and all the way up to the Continental Divide, from the Utah border to the Continental Divide, from the Aspen area all the way north up into the Wyoming border. So all of the northwest quarter of the state of Colorado falls into my region. And so my job is to help people understand what's going on with parks and wildlife in that part of the state.
Awesome. And I think for our listeners and our readers on our website, you've seen Randy's name a lot. We used, as a public information officer, he's the one that's putting out those quotes and things like that. We use him a lot in our publications because we like to go to the source. Randy's that guy that is really that go-to for us at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, especially in that Northwest region, which honestly, I mean, I did a podcast with JT Romansky, and he said the Northwest region is the best region in the state. I'll bet you would concur with that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And JT's my boss, so I'd never argue with him. But it's the joke, or which is within all seriousness. We talk about the Serengeti of the West. The northwest part of Colorado is a vast majority of the deer and elk in the state. It is, it's a go-to spot. So we know the value of this land in this area for people that are involved in the outdoors. We also happen to have, the most visited forest in terms of the White River National Forest. Some of the biggest ski areas, some of the biggest recreation areas, and there's lots of challenges for that crossover between wildlife and recreation. So, it's a big job, and it's a big part of what we do in Colorado for outdoor recreation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a resident of Colorado. I live in Colorado Springs, but I had a deer tag this year. I had an elk tag this year, and of course, where do I go to hunt both those animals? But the Northwest region.
How'd your hunts go, sir? How'd you do?
They were great. I mean,
Good.
My elk hunt. I'll try not to go on too big of a tangent here, but I did want to share this with you. I'm sure our listeners love this too. But
sure.
We went to a unit that we hadn't been to before to hunt up by Craig, and we ended up actually renting llamas to take on a hunt, something I've never done before, and it was awesome. I mean, it was unbelievable. We were able to hike back in. We hiked our camp about 3 or 4 miles back in. The llamas carried most everything. We still each had about 50, 60 pounds on our back, which is a lot better than 100 pounds on our back.
Sure.
Camped out there for 8 days. A couple of us were lucky enough to get some really, really nice bulls. We ended up bringing them back to the trailhead, and we felt like rock stars. One, because we had llamas. Everybody was so interested in the llamas. But then two,
no doubt,
to have 2 big elk on those guys' backs, plus the panniers clear full of meat. I mean, everybody was videoing, taking pictures. It was hilarious. But oh man, such a fun hunt. Deer hunt the same way. We hunted up by Granby, and oh man, it's just such a great place to be, such a great place to hunt. I mean, there really is no better place to hunt than that area.
Absolutely. Well, we love having people come up and come out, and it's great when people do well, and we also hear those stories of people that maybe don't harvest, but really have the opportunity to get out and kind of commune with nature and get together with friends in a sport that is socially distanced in and of itself. So, It was a pretty good season, I think, across the board. We had some challenges with fire and some of those things, and unfortunately had a fatal hunting incident up in Grand County that's drawn some attention and things like that. And so, there's the rough spots, and the fires certainly had an impact. But overall, it was a pretty good hunting season from what I'm hearing from people as far as getting out and harvesting.
Yeah, we actually just published the article about that fatality in Grand County. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was really close to where I was hunting at.
Mm.
Pretty sad deal. But that
Yeah,
that
just
kind of
a bad incident all the way around, and there's not a lot of things we can talk about specifically to
right.
the case, because it's still got to deal with some of the legal side of things. But never want to hear about hunting fatalities. They're rare in the state, less than one a year, which is pretty impressive when you consider back in the 50s and 60s we had about 10 a year. So hunter education has come a long way to making hunting an incredibly safe thing. But that's not what we're talking about today. We'll catch up on some of that, I'm sure, down the road as we debrief the year 2020. But let's chat about wolves, and certainly the voters, by a very, very, very slim margin, coming back and saying, yeah, we want wolves reintroduced to the western part of Colorado. So that's our next challenge.
Oh, and boy, is it ever! That's a great way of putting it, Randy. That it's a challenge. I think you guys have your hands full with this. I
Sure.
mean,
Well, and we
it's a
talked
big
we talked
change.
briefly offline about it. Yeah, we talked about it, and it would be easy, I think, if the voters went 90% in either direction. If it was 90% of people in favor of wolves, or 90% of people saying no, this isn't what we want, it's easier as a management agency to kind of dive into that discussion. But this is a very, very close vote, far closer than anyone predicted. Colorado State University came out with several, news items and press releases and things that said, hey, 84% of the people in Colorado will vote in favor of this. Even 79% will vote in favor in Western Colorado, and they were wildly wrong. This was an extraordinarily close issue for the voters of Colorado, but the issue is decided, and ultimately the voters, whether it was a small margin or not, the voters said, yeah, wolves will be put back into Western Colorado, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife will come up with the plan to do that. And so that's what we're moving on to. It's time to figure out, all right, how does it work, and how does it happen?
It's funny, Randy. I just pulled up the numbers just because I knew it was close. I remember watching it that night and even the next morning looking at the actual numbers. And I just pulled it up, and so close. I mean, it was a matter of 26,000 votes. It was
Yeah.
50.4% yes to 49.6% no. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
get any closer than that.
No, no. And if you were any closer, it would trigger automatic recounts and all of those things. It wasn't quite to the level to trigger the automatic recounts, but the folks that were opposed, the groups that were opposed to this, have not requested a recount, and it's gone on and is certified now. And okay, there's no point in arguing about that. The point now is how do we move forward, and how do we bring such a divisive issue? How do we bring all the sides to the table to get a good, solid plan out there, a plan that works for everybody involved in this? And it's a hot and contentious issue, and our challenge, and Proposition 114 that the voters passed, requires the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission to do a couple of things. They've got to develop a plan to reintroduce and manage gray wolves in the state, to take the steps necessary to do that by the end of 2023. So there's a timeline on this. It's those things have to occur west of the Continental Divide, and that's in the proposition. So we know where at least, in general. And we have to develop a plan to pay fair compensation for livestock losses caused by gray wolves. And so, we've got now kind of the marching orders from the voters to get this plan in place. We have about 2 years to do it, 3 by 2023, so 3 years to get this done, to get this plan in place, and to put wolves on the ground. Now, there's a whole bunch of questions, and that's why we're even having this conversation, Taryn. Is there's a bunch of questions: how, when, where, why, all of those things. Now we got to figure it out. So I want to be able to answer as many questions as you've gotten from your listeners, and see if we can't help answer it. I may not be able to answer all of them because we just don't know. So,
and that's okay. That's perfectly okay. And there's so many questions just from your statement right there. There's so many questions that I want to ask you about what you just talked about, to maybe dig in where we can. Like you said, there's things that we can't answer, but where we can,
sure,
that would be great. And Randy, I love your approach to this. You seem very optimistic about this, because I'll admit most of the response that we've gotten from not necessarily our listeners, but as you see on social media, as you see, just kind of everywhere, it's been a lot of negativity. So I love your approach, Randy, and that you're very you seem very optimistic about this, and I would imagine that Colorado Parks and Wildlife is optimistic about it.
Well, I don't know, and I don't know if it's optimism or pessimism, but there's certainly a level of pragmatism.
Yes.
Ultimately, I guess, there were moments after the vote, where I think everybody in the agency, and we're people too, I think if you take Colorado Parks and Wildlife apart and you get all the people from the agency, there were people that were in favor of it. There were people that were opposed to it, because we're people. And, the other reality of it is, though, it doesn't matter, whether I was opposed to it or in favor of it personally. What matters ultimately is, okay, now we got a job to do. And our agency's been very good about going out and doing the job. In a lot of ways, this is reminiscent of, I guess it was 92 when the spring bear hunt issue went on the ballot. And we can look back at that, and we can complain about it, and we can wrestle with it, and we can say, here's the problems it's caused, and here's the things that it has done that are positive now, and it's 28 years later. And there are still people that are like, well, we need to bring back the spring bear hunt. There are people that are still very much upset with what the voters decided 28 years ago. It doesn't do us any good to sit around and complain about what the voters decided. It's not our job to critique the vote. Our job now, as we have been instructed by the voters, is to figure this out moving forward. And how do we do it in a way that is best for Colorado? So, it's not that the agency has a political opinion. The agency doesn't. All of its employees probably do. But, that's not our role as an agency. Our role as an agency is to go, okay, you've told us what to do. Now we're going to figure out the best way to do that based on science, based on, the social factors, based on the economic factors. How are we going to do that? And you're right. There's a whole bunch of questions. How many wolves? When are we getting them? Where are they going? And those are the questions that, that a lot of people are asking, because they think, oh, okay, I voted for this. Now, the truck should start rolling. And it doesn't work that way. We're going to put together a plan, and we're going to bring everybody to the table to say, how do we do this? How do we do this without having negative implications, or at least minimizing those negative implications on livestock producers? How do we assess what impact this will have for deer, for elk, for moose in Colorado, how do we begin to see? There were a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, well, this will solve the chronic wasting disease problem." Probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
But there's a whole bunch of work we have to do, a bunch of things we have to monitor. Wolves have not typically been in areas where chronic wasting disease is prevalent, but chronic wasting disease is prevalent in Colorado. And so, what will be the impact? Science will tell us that over time. But we're going to have to figure that out. We're going to have to monitor all of those things.
So what does it look like logistically for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife as far as planning this? I mean, do you all have meetings scheduled? Are you reaching out to the different entities on who will be involved in this? I mean, logistically, what does this look like for you all?
Well, logistically, it looks like a big job.
Yes, it does. So, it's daunting from my point of view.
Yeah. But, we don't have to have the answer tomorrow. And so
right.
we're fortunate that there's a timeline to this too. So what we are doing right now is kind of putting together a suggested approach for the public input process, because that's going to be the first thing.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest questions.
Right, is how do we make this work?
Yeah.
Well, there's going to have to be probably, and all of this will go to the Parks and Wildlife Commission so that they can figure out if this is the plan they want. But we'll put a plan together. What do we need to do with public meetings? And I would suspect there will be public meetings. Now, throw COVID in there and try and have public meetings.
Right, yeah. Virtual
there'll
meetings.
be Zoom meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or something around the state, and there will be stakeholders. There are people that have an absolute expectation that they'll be involved in this process. And that's everybody from, cattlemen and wool growers on the very concerned side to the people who supported this ballot measure, whether that's, Defenders of Wildlife and some of the other organizations. Well, now it's our job to get all those people in the same space and have a conversation. And I don't know if all those people are going to be, well behaved and happy to be in the same room, or what. We don't know that. But we're going to put together that initial kind of plan. And I think all of that, to kind of get everybody together, and do we need, what kind of committees need to be put together? There'll obviously be a stakeholder group that'll have to sit down, but there'll be, technical expertise that we will need to tap into. And that's, that's even potentially hiring people within the agency. We have great biologists on staff. We have people that have worked with wolves in the past in, maybe other jobs where they've come to this agency from Montana and Idaho and Wyoming, and they have some personal knowledge. But, we're also going to have to probably bring some expertise into the agency. So I think those are the things that are going on right now. Those are the things that we're talking about right now. Those are the things that, we've got to decide moving forward. And that's all not going to happen overnight.
And I think that's a big message to everybody, that it's not going to happen overnight. And you already touched on the 3 year, we have till the end of 2000, you all have till the end of 2023 to have a good plan in place. Is that a reasonable timetable for something like this? Is that normal?
It's hard to say what's reasonable or unreasonable, because it is what it is. It could be the most ridiculous timeline ever, and there's nothing to be done about that. we feel like it's probably a pretty reasonable amount of time to be able to get everybody together. Now, there are two really big challenges to even starting. We're trying to begin a process where we're saying, okay, one, we need public input. Now, we already talked about one of those big challenges is COVID. If all of this would have gone on 2 years ago, we would have said, okay, well, let's schedule, 20 public meetings around the state of Colorado. Let's get everybody to come in. Let's draw a lot of information, energy, perspectives. Let's see what, different parts of the state, or at least the western part of the state's feeling on this, and what, start to see there may be people that are out there that go, hey, I think this will help, or this could go this way. But, COVID has kept us from just jumping into let's get some public meetings started. So there's a challenge there, but there's another very, very big challenge on the table right now, and that is the federal challenge. Wolves continue to be listed as an endangered species. Now, the federal government, a few days before the election, it was October 29th, came out with a ruling. They announced that they are going to delist the gray wolf from federal protection, and that will occur January 4th of this next year. So in about a month from today. However, anybody that has watched endangered species work for the last 20 years knows one thing. Nothing gets done on that timetable. There will be lawsuits. There will be groups that want the wolf to continue to be an endangered species federally. And that has implications for how we move forward. If wolves are delisted in Colorado and we move forward, that gives us management authority. It makes it so we can move forward with that management authority, and we can get wolves and we can put them into western Colorado. With wolves not being delisted, they remain under the control of the federal government. Now, it doesn't mean we can't move forward. It just means we have to do a different process. There's what are called 10J experimental populations, and there's some ways that it can get done. Obviously, wolves were reintroduced in Yellowstone, and they were still on the endangered species list. So it doesn't prohibit it from happening. It just means there's a different process. But that is the overarching kind of first question that really has to be answered. And frankly, it may not get answered. These lawsuits can go for, years and years and years. So we're really working in the dark a bit with, okay, we're going to try and develop a plan to reintroduce wolves as either an endangered species or, federally endangered species or not. And so that's kind of out of our hands. So we'll proceed, but realize the ground is shifting, and will probably shift again in 30 days in one way or another. There will be lawsuits likely. There will be requests for injunctions, which a judge could keep the federal government from delisting the wolf. So all of those things have to kind of start to play out as we move forward. So there's a lot that's out of our hands, but we've been told to march. So we need to march.
And I appreciate you clarifying that, because I think a lot of people think that once that announcement came out that they were going to be delisted from the federal endangered species list, I think a lot of people thought that, boom, right there and then, they're off the list. It's under the CPW's management once they come in, once they're introduced into Colorado. Mm-hmm. And it's never that simple. It's not. There's a lot of pieces that have to fall in line.
And even if the rule goes into effect January 4th, nobody steps in and sues, and Colorado becomes the managers of wolves. Wolves in the state of Colorado are still a state endangered species, so there's still penalties. It's not like somebody can just go out and start, shooting wolves or breeding them. There's still state penalties that apply in all of those cases. as we manage them as a state species of concern. So, it doesn't just radically, change everything. There's still state level implications for it. So, it doesn't mean that people can just go out and go, okay, let's get rid of these wolves. That can't happen. So, it's so many layers, so many moving parts.
Well, that kind of cuts to a question that probably the question I've gotten the most. Well, maybe not the most, but a lot, and that's: are we going to be able to hunt these wolves once they're introduced and have the population? I think it's 1,200. Am I right on that? Is it 1,200 wolves they're going to introduce?
Well, that number is not actually set.
Oh, okay.
That it will be part of the process. Is what will that number be?
I wonder where I got that 1,200.
There's a lot of people that have. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that have come up with numbers and said, "Oh, this is about what that would be," and there's organizations that have provided their own thoughts on that. We're going to work with the best available science to determine, all right, what does that look like in western Colorado? So the number's not set. We don't know, what that'll be. The plan will come up with that. What I can tell you in regard to the question of hunting, what I can tell you is that species in Colorado, once they are, established, and we have a population objective established and met, the way that we traditionally manage species is through hunting. If you take a look at moose, moose are this iconic critter, and everybody loves Colorado's moose. Well, you go back to 1980, and there weren't any. There were occasional ones that would wander in. Well, it was the sportsman's dollars that went to bring moose back into Colorado to reintroduce them. They were reintroduced in North Park in the early 80s, and they've thrived. And since then, there have been reintroductions in the Creede area, reintroductions on the Grand Mesa, and they're spreading out on their own, and they're really doing a very good job. But now in Colorado, we hunt moose. So it's likely that, and nobody knows how far down the road that would be, but it's likely when they reach whatever number is established by the process that hunting would be one of those management tools. At some point, the population, has to have that top end number. Is where do we have it so that for the health of the wolves that are here, they don't become overpopulated. They don't decimate, other species. They don't get into more conflict than is necessary because there's not enough space for them. So, something has to be done to kind of manage that level to whatever is determined to be Colorado's level. And hunting would be the traditional way that we as an agency have done that.
I think that's one bright spot people are looking at with, as far as hunters are looking at, now that it's been, passed, the vote has passed, they're thinking, okay, well, there's a lot of us hunters, myself included. I'd love to go hunt wolves. I've thought about going to Idaho or wherever to hunt wolves, and so
sure,
I think that's one silver lining, I guess I will say, out of this, is that hunters may have that possibility to hunt wolves within Colorado. So let me ask you.
Sure, and down the road, that's a likely tool in our toolkit that will be used to manage the population. Now, there's a long ways to go before we get there.
Yes, yeah, that's gonna be a lot of years away.
Yeah. Don't expect that to be 2024 if we get wolves on the ground in 2023. You've got to make sure that there's a population that it's sustaining itself and all of those things. But it's definitely a tool that is traditionally used and would likely be used in this case to manage populations.
Gotcha. Let me ask you a couple kind of random questions. You probably don't there probably is not an answer to these questions at this point,
Okay,
but they
sure,
are questionnaires that my
sure.
listeners sent in to me, and I'm curious as well. So I'll kind of a two
Okay.
part question. The first one is do they know where the wolves will be relocated from? And then as far as the introduction, is it going to be like a mass introduction, or are they going to do it slowly? Have they had any kind of those kind of conversations at this point?
Not entirely. So, when it comes to where they're going to come from, it's likely they would come from the states that already have them. And we've had some very preliminary conversations with those states. Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, even California, Oregon, Washington are getting some into some of their kind of eastern regions. And those states are probably willing to work with us when the time comes. So I would suspect that would be where they would come from, would be the other states that already have them and they seem willing to share. Now, as far as numbers and how, that's going to come down to best available science. Is where are they going to go? And what's best to do, and that's going to take kind of research on how did everybody else do it. If you bring in a pack, is that a pack of 8 and you put them somewhere, or do you try to bring in bigger groups and just throw them out there and hope they do whatever they're supposed to do and form in packs and all? That's going to take a lot of research. There's so many moving parts to this, Taryn. For example, do you bring in wolves, and let's say they're not an endangered species. Let's say that the federal government does delist them. Where do you put them? Well, can you put them on public land? Can you just go out to the White River National Forest and go, hey, great news, you're getting wolves? Well,
That's a good question.
there's certainly there's certainly some questions there in terms of environmental policy reviews and federal reviews at that level. Would that be necessary if wolves are placed on public land? Potentially, there's a big process that has to happen. Well, what about private land? What if a private landowner came out and said, well, you can put wolves on my land? Well, then what happens when the wolves leave that land? Because they're not going to, even if it's a massive ranch, they're not going to stay necessarily right on that ranch. How do we answer those questions? And it's really going to be about getting everybody together and going, okay, here's all the particulars. One of the challenges is the initiative itself calls for us to develop a plan to pay for losses with livestock producers. It is something that we do for mountain lions and bears in Colorado. Mountain lion or bear eats your cow, we pay for the loss of the cow. Well, it's a little bit tricky because the state statute says we can only pay losses for game species. So mountain lions are a game species. They're a hunted species in Colorado. So we can pay losses when a mountain lion kills something. We can pay losses when a bear kills something because bears are a hunted species. So we have an income stream of hunting licenses that pays for those losses. Wolves, when they are initially brought into Colorado, or even those that have migrated into Colorado and are already here, are not a game species. So the statute actually prohibits us, the way it's written now, from paying for those losses. And there's a bit of a conflict now with, this initiative that's passed that says, you got to come up with a plan. So we're going to have to work with the legislature. There's laws that have to be looked at, reviewed, and maybe tweaked that have to go into this process as well. There's a lot of moving parts. And so we're going to take our time and do this in a wise way. Nobody wants to mess it up. Now, we've got a lot of experience. Like we already talked about moose. Let's talk about lynx. Lynx were brought in as an endangered species, as a 10J, kind of experimental population. We brought lynx into Colorado, and frankly, we didn't do a very good job of it. at least initially, we made mistakes. And some of those mistakes led to, lynx out there starving on the landscape because we brought them in at the wrong time of year. We learned from that, and we went, oh, hey, wait a second. Okay, we got to do that different. We learned from it, and we've been very, very successful since then. So we have experience with these things, but we also know it takes time to figure out all those moving parts and make sure everything is in place to do this in a wise way. And like I said, that's where science and sociology and finance all come into play as we try and figure out a lot of these things.
Well, that's a great thing about the people that you have there at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife is you have the professionals. Like I said, I talked to JT about this, and us as hunters, we know everything. If you've ever talked to one of us, we just know it
Sure.
all. So just ask us. No, but
right?
but in all seriousness, you do have the professionals there that have experience with this, whether it be introducing a different animal into Colorado or whether it be introducing wolves into another state. Like you said, you've had other people that have come into Colorado, the Colorado Parks and Wildlife from other states. So having their knowledge, I think, is going to help immensely. And even at the end of the day, I'm sure there'll still be mistakes. Honestly, I mean, there's
Sure.
still going to be tweaks that y'all are going to have to make once they're introduced. Like, oh well, probably shouldn't have put them there, or probably shouldn't have introduced them at that time. I think those things are going to happen, don't you?
Well, absolutely. And because nothing like this has ever been done. I mean, we can look to Idaho and say, hey, what mistakes did you make? And they'll tell us, and we can look to Montana, and we can look to the National Park Service at Yellowstone, and we can say, okay, what mistakes were there? What should we be mindful of? What should we be watching for? And the reality is those states aren't Colorado. We have, 6 million people in the state of Colorado, and throw in another, couple million of visitors. There are a lot of people on the ground. I mean, we have more people in Colorado than all of those states, Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho combined. And we're in a state the size of, what Wyoming has. So, even those states saying, hey, be careful about this or be careful about that, when we get, wolves on the ground, they're going to be interacting with people likely far more than what those experiences have seen in other places. So there will be mistakes. There will be things that we're going to have to figure out and deal with, and bridges will cross as we go. So, hopefully everybody on all sides will be patient. And I that's a great thing to say, but it's not a very, it's not a very realistic.
Doesn't always happen.
Right. Yeah. And especially when you get an issue that is, 50.49% to 49.51%, split right down the middle.
Yeah.
It leaves us with that feeling of, well, I guess if we make everybody mad, we're doing the right thing. And,
Right.
and that's not necessarily our policy approach. But with this issue, it's one of those things that you have to look at and you go, wow, man, we're going to make nobody happy. Oh, well.
Yeah.
We'll just do the best we can.
Exactly. It's what was voted in, and at that point, like you said, you can have your own personal opinions about it, but at the end of the day, you got to get in and do your job and figure out the best way to manage it, and then tweak it as it goes on. And it actually,
Right.
Randy, that's kind of I'll ask you this question, and I'll get you out of here on this question is, do you historically, I know with other game animals, there's like a periodic time frame of when you guys reevaluate plans and develop new plans for those animals. Will wolves be along those same lines? Will you guys reevaluate every 2 years, every year? I mean, have you guys talked about that, of how often you'll really reevaluate the plans for them?
I believe that, it'll be like most of the species that we manage, where we will kind of constantly do that review. Even with hunting of elk, that's a 5-year big game season structure process. Every 5 years, we're really taking a look at season dates and all of those things. So it's you can't just throw them out there and go, okay, good to go, and walk away. There's things that will change. So we'll be monitoring those things, of course. And part of this proposition even says, we're to kind of develop a plan and continue to advance the plan. So there will be kind of constant review of what's happening out there, and we'll do that. Let me close it with this, Taryn, and I think this is probably the thing that I hope most of your listeners will understand. Because this is a public process, we need the public involved. If people sit back and say, well, let's see what they come up with, then they have no expectation that it's going to be anything close to what they want or need or feel. And so, people need to be involved. Sports people need to be involved. Hunters need to be involved. The January Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting, if, pay attention. If this is an issue that you believe you have a stake in, pay attention. Follow the press releases, the meeting announcements that the agency puts out, and be involved. Because I can assure you that there are other people that will be involved, and we need everybody at the table.
Yeah, the proof is in the pudding. There will be others involved. I had a chance to visit some of those meetings before the vote, and people obviously living on the eastern side of the Continental Divide. A lot of different folks myself at those meetings. But you're absolutely right. Those hunters out there, those sportsmen and women, really whatever you enjoy doing. Like you said, if this is something that impacts you, and it does, as hunters, absolutely. I mean, I've had people reach out to me saying, "Oh, hunting's done in Colorado." I think that's very dramatic, but
Sure.
Those kind of things. But you're right. If that's your thought on this, then yeah, you need to get out. You need to be involved. You need to. Just because the vote has happened doesn't mean we still can't be involved in this.
Sure.
Yes, they'll be introduced, but I think we still have a lot of say in it as a public of what will happen. Obviously, we'll lean on you all as professionals to make the final decisions, but myself included, I have this plays a big role in my life. Hunting is a big part of my life, and I love hunting in Colorado, especially, we already talked about it, the northwest region of Colorado where these wolves will be introduced. And so I feel like I have this impacts me in a big way. So myself included, and everybody that's listening, that if you feel like you're involved in this and impacted by this, get involved. So
yeah, stay involved. Stay involved. It's really, really critically important that as we as an agency and as the Parks and Wildlife Commission as our appointed oversight body move forward, that they hear from all the people that are involved in this issue. And I think ultimately all of us, and I say us because I live in Grand Junction, all of us in Western Colorado are certainly involved. And so, stay involved. We'll do the best we can, but the only way we can do the best we can is if we hear from people, because we still represent everybody. We don't just represent the 50.49%. We also have to represent the 49.51% that voted against this measure. And we're going to do what the voters asked. We have an obligation to do that, but we want to do it in a way that is intelligent, that is thought out, and that is using science as its basis.
Yeah. We wear our emotions on our cuff on our sleeve as hunters, and so I appreciate you saying that'll be your approach. It'll be a scientific approach, a smart approach, and
sure,
we appreciate.
Well, and if we mess it up, just call us and yell at us. People do that anyway. So we're always open for that. I'm always open for that. I get in that position where I have to argue with people constantly, and that's okay. That's my job. So we don't mind it one bit. So.
But if you're going to call Randy and yell at him and argue with him, at least make sure that you're somewhat involved and know what you're talking about, though. I'll throw that out
That's
there.
Right. That's right.
Well, Randy, thank you so much for jumping on again
You
with
bet,
me.
Taryn.
This has been such a hot topic item. Like I said, I've gotten so many drastic emails. I've gotten so many
Hmm.
comments that have just been a little bit off the wall. But for the most part, people are genuinely concerned. They genuinely want to do what's best for Colorado, what's best for the situation. We understand that the vote has happened, and we'll live with it and appreciate what you guys do. So I appreciate you again taking the time to educate myself and our listeners about this.
You bet, Taryn. Thank you for having us on. Thanks, E Hunter, for putting this out. And like I said, we'll hopefully see everybody as this process moves forward.
Yep, absolutely. All right, thanks, Randy. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Taryn. Take care.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even if we don't. Right. Yeah, if you make it over this way, even if we can't record a podcast, I'd love to buy you lunch or something like that, just to, yeah, like I said, meet you in person and shake your hand. Sounds good. All right, Randy. Well, I'll let you go. I'm gonna jump on another one. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. See ya. All right. Bye.